Morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in your part of the world. I want to welcome you to Virtual Reality Church. My name is DJ Soto, one of the pastors here at VR Church, and it's good to be back, man. It's like Pastor Lena was saying, I've been gone for a long time. We started the church in 2016. Can you believe that? Way before COVID. And we've been doing, church in the metaverse for years. And that whole time, I don't think I've ever missed a Sunday, occasional vacation. I think a little sabbatical in there, but man, what a crazy few months for me. We know COVID hit me hard pretty early summer. I carried for a couple of months just trying to recover from that, right into a move. And anybody knows, everyone knows that moving can be stressful. And so, man, what a crazy like summer it was. And so we'll have to, I don't know, do a podcast about that because I'm just really thankful to be here. Even through the difficulty that we've gone through, it's just so beautiful just to be back in church. And what's happening here? Why is everything looking like doubly amazing from the time I left, and then now I get back and this is like epic, building worlds over here. This is crazy, amazing job. And so a big thank you just to everybody in big and small ways who has sustained the church and teaching, building, small admin things, promoting ideas, following up with messages. And so just want to say thank you for that. I think my voice is kind of struggling a little bit, so just don't mind that. I think I'll get a little sickness coming through, but I think I'll be fine. And then what was the other thing I was going to tell you guys? The team and what you guys have been doing. And oh yes, really looking forward to what's coming up in VR Church. If this is your first time, there's lots of things I could tell you about the church, but one of the things we'd like to do every year is refresh the vision. So we are in season 5 of VR Church, and we're going to be entering season 6. And what that is we take a look at everything big and small, and we look for an opportunity, like what do we need to add? What do we need to take away? What's working? What's not working? We try to get some feedback from the community on our Discord, and we really refresh the vision. And so we'll launch that on Vision Sunday. Now, usually that's in September. Every September we'll do Vision Sunday, launch the new season, but with COVID and moving, and Pastor Lena's going to take some time off because she's been working super hard covering for me. And so actually, Pastor Lena, I think we should give you some heart emojis just to say thank you for all the hard work that you've done behind the scenes. And so thank you for that. So season 6 is coming. Looking forward to that. Vision Sunday. We don't know when that date is. We'll let you know as soon as we know. Probably be late fall, early winter, just to give us some time for me to get settled. Alina's going to take some time off, and then we'll get cranking. And really looking forward to it. Got some really interesting things, and my style tends to speak, reveal stuff too early. So I'm going to hold back right now because I think there's going to be some fun things as we continue to just create a loving spiritual communities across the metaverse. And really, that's our main goal, is to cultivate the love of God with people all across the metaverse. That's the main thing. Well, Pastor, don't you want to become like the biggest metaverse church or well-known or this, that? Our main goal here is the love of God, and to experience that, to love each other. That is why we exist, and that's what we're going to continue to be doing. So thank you so much for that. All right, we are in the book of Matthew. So we're going to jump into the sermon for today. And if this is your first time, we like to read one chapter of the Bible every week. Been doing that for the longest time. We've gone through most of the New Testament. I think we're probably in the next couple years, one or 2 years, we'll be wrapping up the New Testament. And who knows, I think we're eyeing up some ideas for the Old Testament. I'm getting into teaching for that, so that'll be fun. Some epic builds there, crossing the Red Sea, David and Goliath, some really epic stories. So, I mean, if this is what's happening, I can't imagine a year or two what we're going to be building. So, man, I'm really looking forward to that. But we read one chapter of the Bible every week. Sometimes we split up the chapters because if it gets super long, we realized we felt like we were rushing a chapter, like just to get through it. And so like today it is kind of split up. It's kind of like a part 2 over here in Matthew chapter 26. And so it's kind of like we're going to feel like we're missing some of the ending. And that's because you can think of it like an episode, like maybe your favorite Netflix series, perhaps Hulu. When you come to the end of the episode, they leave you hanging. So it's kind of like that today. Continuing the story of Christ, learning about God's Son, learning about Jesus. Why did he come to earth? What was his message? What was he here all about? And there's so many things that we can talk about, but I love this one verse. I hope you just kind of chew on this throughout the day. But it comes from a different gospel in John 10:10. Jesus says, I have come that you might have life and life to the full. Another translation says a rich and satisfying life. And so Jesus, in his own words, reveals to us why he has come to give us life, and not just life to the full, overflowing life, abundant life, plenty of it. Not just barely getting through, not just, oh, Pastor, I'm just going to survive and hang on for the rest of my life. Pastor, I'm just going to, hopefully I'll make it. Jesus doesn't want us to barely make it or survive. He wants us to live in an abundance, some abundant life through the power of God, through the love of God. That's why he came. He has come, and we'll see here in Matthew, this story where he dies and he's buried and he rose again to conquer those sins, those things that are anti-life, that goes against the life that God has for us, sins, regrets, failures, mistakes, you name it. Perhaps some of us have gone through a thing or two when it comes to that, and God has come to cleanse that away, to forgive us, to release us, to bury it in the depths of the sea, to separate us from that sin as far as the east is from the west. He remembers it no more. He's clearing the slate, man, because he wants your brain not to be filled with lack or sin or guilt or regret, but to be filled with abundant life. Those are the thoughts of your brain and of your mind and your spirit and how you express your life. And so we see this Jesus who wants to transform us into that spirit that he has for us. And so now in this story, we're here at this epic moment. The story's kind of like getting fever pitch. It's becoming climactic, like your favorite movie you might see or a book you might read, where things start to really take off. We've already established the characters. We've already established like the good guys, the bad guys, what's happening. And now we're getting to the point where we're going right to the death, the burial, and the resurrection, this victorious moment. But today, we're going to see a little bit of the sad part of the story. I don't know if there's any Star Wars fans, but the middle one is one of people's favorites of the original three. I know there's a bunch now. The original three, The Empire Strikes Back. And when you go look at that one and watch that movie, that's kind of intense. There's kind of a darkness. There's kind of a sadness to it. But it's just the middle movie leading to something that's coming greater. So in the next week or so, you're going to see that kind of Empire Strikes Back feel, where it feels like evil wins. It feels like bad things are overcoming good. It's what it appears to be. It's what it feels like, but it's not the truth. There's something going on behind the scenes. So let's go, and we're going to go read Matthew chapter 26 together. So if this is your first time, come follow me. If you're just popping in and you're having some lag issues, make sure to go to your display. And there's a setting for, I think, render distance. You want to put that to 1 and perhaps lower your, I think it's called, what's it called? I forget. It'd be cool if you can help me out there. The other setting.
The lower your anti-aliasing and
The other
anti-aliasing, setting. This is called the other setting. Inward render scale.
Yes, if you're having issues with that.
1.0. And that should work.
All right, if you don't mind helping me read, save my voice a little bit. I put raise hands if you don't mind reading in public. Let me know. But I'll start it out. And here's, like I mentioned before, things start to take an interesting turn. Let me go ahead and read verse 36 here. It says, then Jesus brought them to a garden grove. So he's talking about the disciples. The end is coming. The confrontation with the religious leaders are about to happen. And so this is the moment. And he brings them to this beautiful place. a place perhaps that they've been before, perhaps where they've prayed. There's something about going out in nature, isn't it? Something that's just calming. There's like mental health benefits to just coming out in nature, going to a garden, a botanical garden, something like that. It's interesting. Just a little side note to see Jesus coming here in the midst of what is going to be turmoil. So then Jesus brought them to a garden grove, Gethsemane, and told them to sit down and wait while he went on ahead to pray. Now, man, this is serious stuff because Jesus knows what's a coming. He sees down that path and now he's preparing himself for what is coming. And in verse 37, it says, he took Peter with him and Zebedee, two sons, James and John, and began to be filled with anguish and despair. And that's such an interesting passage of scripture to me because it really shows the humanity of Jesus, fully God, yet fully man. And not love it in a sense of like a gleeful thing, but just love to see these words because we can relate to that. Sometimes God, Jesus, it seems unrelatable, right? You're just like a heavenly being, and you're just kind of like, if you look in the sky, just separate from us, going through the realities of life, because some of us are going through some stuff, man. I know I see on the Discord channel, people are going through difficult times. I've gone through difficult times. You have as well. I need to be praying for Pastor Coco because her family and her mom is, there's a lot of challenges there. Man, some of y'all are, maybe you haven't even mentioned it. Like, I'm just kind of keeping it to myself. You're going through stuff, through depression, through anxiety. And you see here the humanity of Christ. He was filled with anguish and despair. And I think that's encouraging to me because it's not like this Jesus that's like, oh, right, have faith, be happy all the time, smile. And I love that. I love that positive mindset, framing your life that way and, interacting with others in that way, even in the midst of difficulties and burden. But then there's the reality of, man, just taking a moment to God, I'm upset. I'm really sad. I'm really discouraged. I'm really burdened. And Jesus displays that. The writer shows us that he was filled with anguish and even despair. The Son of God, yet fully man, filled with despair. And you see here in this next verse how he expresses that. Then he told them, my soul is crushed with horror and sadness to the point of death. Stay here, stay awake with me. Jesus needed his friends with him during this moment. And I think that's a beautiful thing where that we need each other in these moments of difficulty. I've heard someone say recently, and I've thought the same thing, so I'm not criticizing them. They said something to the effect of, well, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to burden anybody. And then once they expressed what was going on, and this was like through a little like a communication chat, other people chimed in. Oh man, I'm going through that. Oh, I'm having a hard time. And then people got together, I think in VR chat. And so what happened there in that moment when we expressed what was going on? We didn't hide it. We didn't have this mindset that says, I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to burden anybody. When that was expressed, other people related to it, connections were made. And man, that's beautiful. I hope our church becomes a church that is like that. And we don't have to hide what we're going through, whatever it is. I know that church sometimes is a difficult place to be transparent. It's a difficult place to be authentic because of the history of judgmentalism in the church and spiritual abuse. I know that's difficult, but man, I hope our church can earn the right, so to speak, or can cultivate this community. We can come and be our authentic selves. Because you know what, in a room this size, looking across everybody, some of us are going through it. Some of us are hurting. Some of us are having a difficult time. And it's important to find that bravery. And I know it's difficult, fair enough, to find that courage to speak and say, I'm not doing well. Boom. People are like, me either. Let's get together, and then we can journey in this together. Man, not solo, not journeying this by ourselves or on our own or just bearing the burden, you know, um, with no one else to that this is just um My soul is crushed with horror and sadness to the point of death. Stay here, stay with me. Some of us need to say that like Jesus did. He's giving us a great example. I know the stories about the crucifixion. I know there's a greater story, but there's also this underlying story of authenticity, transparency, needing each other. Well, Jesus didn't need nobody. No, here in this passage, you see, he needed his friends. And I hope Pastor Lena and leaders and everyone here, we can cultivate, we can be that type of church where someone says, my soul is crushed to death. And we don't go, you don't have enough faith, you suck. And we come around them and we say, we're with you, man. Let's journey this together. That's where we're going. All right, let me have someone read 39 and 40. See who's on the list here. Rochelle, if you don't mind reading 39 and 40, that'd be great.
He went forward a little and fell face downward on the ground and prayed, My Father, if it is possible, let this cup be taken away from me. But I want your will, not mine. Then he returned to the 3 disciples, found them asleep. Peter, he called, couldn't you even stay awake with me 1 hour?
Yeah, Peter, can you just stay? Thank you, Rochelle, by the way. Peter, how couldn't stay awake just for even a little bit? But here in this moment, and by the way, if you're new to VR Church, feel free to walk around, explore. If you want to come up to the avatars here and you want to take a picture or a selfie, feel free to. You don't have to just stand still if you don't want to. You totally can. But here is this moment, and the reason I think it's good to really, enjoy the world build is because it just becomes visceral. It imprints in our spirit in a different way, where we see Jesus falling to the ground. Again, I think sometimes in church we're expecting like, hey, I'm having no problems and my faith is strong and, no crying and wipe that tear off your face. No, we see Jesus in anguish, falling to the ground. His soul is in despair. And it was so heavy. He fell face downward on the ground and prayed. Have you ever see, you can tell that things are deep, things are heavy. Ever just gone to your bed and just fell on it, started crying, just screaming and crying? I mean, you're physically, you can't even just stand, you're just boom. And in the same way, you have this moment where Jesus falls downward on the ground, but he still prays. And I think that's important because remember that even in our darkest time, God hasn't left us. There's that passage in Romans that talks about, can anything separate us from the love of God? Great question, by the way. Can anything at some point separate us from God's love? Because surely there's something. And the writer Paul says, nope, I am convinced that nothing will ever separate us from the love of God. And in that passage, he kind of says, well, what about, and I'm paraphrasing here, but what about when we have difficulty? What about when it gets really hard? Does he not love us then? And he's like, no, he still loves us. So the writer in the book of Romans is like, even in those difficulties, even in those dark moments, God still is with you. He still loves you. Doesn't feel like he loves you. Does it feel like he's with you? Because you're kind of like, okay, God, if you love me and you're with me, then remove this issue from my life, And so I think that's important to mention. And the reason the writer in Romans talked about that is because I think our natural conclusion in that difficulty, in that darkness, is that God doesn't love us anymore. He's left us. He's done with us. He's impatient, but that's not the truth. The truth is that he does love us. And so I think you see how he fell downward on the ground and prayed. And that shows faith in the midst of darkness. And so that's my encouragement to you is when in those moments when you will have anguish, when you will have despair, to keep your faith, to stay in faith, to pray, to call out to God. And that's a great example for us. Here's his prayer. I think this is an interesting prayer because I think it reveals something very deep and special. He says, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup be taken away from me. But I want your will, not mine. And so I've kind of thought about that. I think perhaps there's different conclusions, or perhaps there's different theologians that come to different perspectives about it. I don't think he's asking the cup to be removed from him as far as like the actual events that are about to happen, like the death, burial, and resurrection. Because he's talked about in 3 days he'll be back. He's talked about you can tear down this temple in 3 days, I'll build it back up. And he's talking about himself. I think he's talking about in this moment that he does not want to experience is when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" We're going to see that story here in a bit in a later chapter where he's like, "God, you're no longer with me. I don't no longer sense you. I don't no longer feel you anymore." Kind of like an abandoned child, a scared, abandoned child is by themselves crying. And he knows in that moment where he takes on the sins of the world that at least from his perception, be separated from God. And that moment you see in the narrative of the crucifixion where he goes, my God, why have you forsaken me?" I don't think Jesus is asking for to escape the pain, although maybe he's saying that, or to escape, the trial with Pilate, or whatever was coming up next. I think it was in that moment, the Father and the Son, and darkness comes between them because Jesus has taken on the sin of the world. "My Father, if it's possible, let this cup be taken away from you, but I want your will, not mine." And so, and then he talked to the disciples about staying awake. Let's have someone read verse 41 and 42, because again, there's little nuggets. We have this overarching narrative that we're talking about the death, burial, and the resurrection. But man, we're getting these little nuggets, golden nuggets from what we can learn about here. Alice, if you don't mind reading, let's see here, 41 and 42.
All right. Keep alert and pray, otherwise temptation will overpower you. For the spirit indeed is willing, but how weak the body is. Again he left them and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot go away until I drink it all, your will be done."
All right. Thank you so much, Alice. Appreciate that. And so again, some nuggets here. Keep alert and pray. That word alert has the idea of being sober minded, kind of thinking of like, going out and getting drinking too much, kind of losing your perceptions, your faculties, your, oh, I drank too much and now I'm not sober minded anymore. And so that's kind of the idea of the word about keeping alert, is that in our minds, that we're alerted to the presence of God. We're not distracted by other things. We're not dulled by the experiences of life, or the things that we're going through. So this little nugget here about keeping alert and pray in the midst of difficulty, which is tough, right? Because maybe whatever you're going through, you're tired. You've been going through this difficulty for a long time. By the way, I can't wait till we build the book of Job. Maybe we do that first in the Old Testament, because that's like overcoming difficulty, really facing some challenges. But to be alert and to pray. I feel like that word pray has this idea of continually talking to God. So prayer is not like, this official thing where you get down on your knees and when you're done, then you have to wait, 24 hours till it respawns another prayer, point, and then you can pray again. Is this idea of continually conversating with God? It's always happening, maybe in official moments, in unofficial moments, and thoughts and prayers. So this idea of keeping alert, being sober-minded and praying, otherwise temptation will overpower you. And this is such a powerful phrase here. "The spirit indeed is willing, but how weak is the body?" Remember in Romans, Paul talks about that. The things I want to do, I don't do them. And the things I don't want to do, I do those things. Right. So even Paul reflects this attitude where the spirit indeed is willing, but the body is weak. And even Paul in that writing was like, "Who's going to help me? Oh, wretched man that I am, who's going to deliver me from this body of death?" I thank God through Jesus Christ, we have victory through him. And so this is the victory we're talking about, and what we're leading to, what Jesus has done gives us that victory. Let's see here, 41. Again, he left them and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot go away until I drink it all, your will be done." So again, you see here, Jesus taking the moment to pray. 43 and 44. Who's next on the list? Lena, I see you. You want to do 43 and 44?
Hi. Yes, please. I'd love to. Thank you. And Coldus, I just got your message. Coldus is also trying to read. For some reason, his hand keeps, I don't know if you're telling him, no, he raises
Oh,
his
no.
hands and then it keeps disappearing.
You
Surely
can
you're
just
not.
go, you can go on make fun, right?
Yeah, megaphone. Coldest can do megaphone on your own. So if you'd like to read
I don't
next,
see your
Coldest,
name.
just hop on your megaphone and go for it, okay?
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
3 and 4, right?
Yeah, go for
I
it.
don't think your megaphone is on though. I think your megaphone. Yeah,
No,
43 and
should be on right now.
actually,
Okay.
why don't you do 43 through 46?
Okay. He returned to them again and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So he went back to prayer the third time, saying the same things again. And he came to the disciples and said, "Sleep on now and take your rest. No, the time has come. I am betrayed into the hands of evil men. Look, let's be going. Look, here comes the man who is betraying me."
All right, thank you so much. And by the way, here's what I love about this build and why I'm kind of like, I know this sounds weird, where I can't wait for Revelation. So if you look in the background, you see this kind of like the being in the background and this kind of like splitting of the heavens here. What Revelation reveals to us is that there's stuff going on in the heavenly realms. So we're reading what's happening in the physical realm. So Jesus comes to pray. He's in the garden. He's talking to his disciples. The soldiers are about to arrest him. And so it's kind of played out on the physical plane. It's kind of played out very simply like that. Revelation reveals the realms between good and evil. Michael the archangel and the dragon. It's amazing to see how in the alliteration of Revelation, how the dragon has come to kill the child, and so there's this battle in heaven. Anyways, so it's kind of like a bookmark in your brain that this is what's happening here in the physical realm. Here we are in the garden with the beautiful flowers and what's happening, but there's also something happening in the heavenly realm. That's something to keep in mind. I believe in our lives is that I know there's not everything is like a heavenly war that's going on. You had a bad day and oh no, that's a heavenly battle. No, I'm not saying everything is like a demon behind every bush type of thing. But what I am saying is that there is stuff going on behind the scenes. There is stuff going on in a heavenly realm, and that's just something to be thinking about. There's more to life than just what's physically happening. There's a heavenly war that's happening as well. And so, just to keep that in mind, these guys were sleepy. I don't blame them, right? Because maybe it was late at night. Maybe I would do the same thing. But Jesus continues to pray, saying the same things over and over again. I think that's okay, man. Like to pray to God. God, I need help. I'm going through this struggle. God, I need help. I'm going through this struggle. You're just repeating the same things over and over again. I know the Bible talks about repetition of prayer, but I think that's more of like in a religious kind of like mantras. And man, when your soul is crushed and in despair, if all you got is just God help me, that's all you got. Just keep praying that prayer to God. In verse 30 or 45, then he came to the disciples and said, "Sleep on now and take your rest." So in Jesus' mind, all right, I don't know when it's coming, but it's time to rest now. But man, whatever was going on in the heavenly realm manifested itself right away because he must have looked up or something. He must have said, "Guys, okay, I prayed. Take your rest. Let's go." And maybe his eyes went across, we're about to go over here, over the hill, and maybe he saw what was coming. And what we saw was coming created this response. But no, the time has come. I'm betrayed into the hands of evil men. This is happening in real time. Up, let's go. Let's be going. Look, here comes the man who is betraying me. So let's start heading up over this hill. And if you stand right about here, now you start to see what Jesus, like, this is kind of like a movie moment, right? Like if you start where I'm at and you kind of like, here's Judas in the green shirt. You kind of walk up to him in this like moment where, oh my goodness, right? You start to see what is happening. What's all these people? We got soldiers, we got the high priest. What's happening here? If you kind of take that little, I don't know, on Twitch, Aaron, if you want to do this like little motion where what Jesus sees. Oh, here is the betrayer, and then you come over the edge and you go, oh my goodness, there's a whole army here. And then I'll read verse 47. Well, let me back up. Up, let's be going. Look, here comes the man who is betraying me. At that very moment, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, one of his own 12, arrived with a great crowd, armed with swords and clubs sent by the Jewish leaders. So here's here's Judas, and he comes, and then Jesus looks beyond him, swords and clubs and high priests and soldiers. And you would think Jesus would have, like, I don't know, murdered someone. You know, maybe he did some egregious like crime. Maybe he did something just really awful. That to send an army after Jesus, that's pretty intense. He must have done something. That they were sent by the Jewish leaders. Let me have someone read 48 through 50. Let's see who's next. Lena, I think you're next. You want to read 48 through 50?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And it looks like in the last week as well. So if anyone else has been thinking about it, now's a wonderful time to go ahead and raise that hand as we have a bit more to get through. But yeah, let's do this. 48 through 50, right? Right. Judas had told them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Judas had told them to arrest the man he greeted, for that would be the one they were after. So now Judas came straight to Jesus and said, "Hello, Master," and embraced him in a friendly fashion. Jesus said, "My friend, go ahead and do what you have come for." And the others grabbed him.
All right, so here's now the story. Now we're sort of hitting to the end. The story is really taking off really now, because now the rubber meets the road. From here on out, there's no turning back. Jesus comes up to Judas, and in other Gospels, we see that he was betrayed with a kiss, Master. And so Judas had told them to arrest the man he greeted. And so he said in this, I don't know, man, when you read this, it's so difficult, because don't you hate that feeling of being backstabbed? And maybe some of you have. You felt that betrayal from someone that was part of your 12, so to speak. They were your friend, your family, and now they backstabbed you. They're talking behind your back, and that feeling of betrayal. That it's different if someone, somebody doesn't like you, or they're your quote unquote enemy, or you just have this conflict with some person out there and they hate you and you got hate from them. That's something. But man, to think about, like, when someone someone you've journeyed with, someone you love, someone that's a part of your circle, and they're the ones that betray you, man, that's so difficult. So think about what Jesus is experiencing, not just at a physical level. Think of Jesus, the physical aspect of his death, not just at a spiritual level, the moment of being separated from God, but now at the emotional level. And that hurts. And I feel like Jesus was seeing all of this coming, and that's why his soul was filled with anguish to be betrayed. Man, that's so difficult. And he embraced him in a friendly fashion. And Jesus, in his love, says, "My friend, go ahead and do what you have come." And they grabbed him. Now let's click over here, and you're going to want to get close to the action. Are these pick-upable? Sometimes these used to be pick-upable. Oh, they have like a sound effect coming out of them. Those fire things. Let's see here, 51 through 53. Let's see, Phantom, can you do 51 through 53?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. One of the men with Jesus pulled out a sword and slashed off the ear of the high priest's servants. "Put away your sword," Jesus told him. "Those using swords will get killed. When you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, he would send them instantly."
All right, thank you so much, Phantom. I need a volunteer just to come over here real quick. Be the high priest servant, just kind of like stand here. If I just need one person, just real fast. All right, thank you, Coldest. You're the high priest servant right here, and you're getting your ears sliced off. You can stand stand over here. There you go. Someone to take a picture of that. Thank you, Coldest. So, man, now was Peter pulls out, and you can stay over there, by the way, Coldest, because I'm going to reference you here in just a second. But we later find out it was Peter. Peter pulls out the sword, slashes the ear off. And by the way, there's this misconception primarily from Judas and others that they thought Jesus was here to overthrow the Roman government. They thought this whole Messiah thing, this Jesus thing, was about overthrowing Rome, and that's what they were hoping to do. And I think, as I've read some theologians, they believe that that was the catalyst for Judas's betrayal. It wasn't necessarily the money, like, you know, he got 40 pieces of silver or whatever the amount was. It wasn't so much about that. It was about Judas wanted to get this thing going. Hey man, we're here to overthrow Rome. Let's do this. Jesus, I'm tired of this waiting stuff and this talk of love that you're doing, and let's do this. I feel like I kind of agree with that he was trying to get this thing going. And so we had this moment where the Peter pulls out his sword. Maybe Peter was like, yeah, it's starting now, the revolution. You know what I mean? And maybe he thought, this is it. And poor Coldest, or the servant of the high priest, got his ear chopped off. In another gospel, as grotesque as it sounds, Jesus picks up the ear and puts it back on him and heals him. So you're okay, Coldest. Now you can go. Your ear is back on your head. You're safe. But again, 52. This is Jesus in a nutshell saying, "No, I'm not here to overthrow Rome. Put away your sword." Jesus told him, "Those using the sword will get killed." And so Jesus isn't here to overthrow Rome. He's over here to overthrow a different type of government. The things that rule our lives, like depression, discouragement, sins, shame, all that governments of those things that would harm us. That is what Jesus has come to overthrow, not Rome. He come to overthrow sin. And in verse 53, it's kind of like what I was talking about. Like if you look beyond this over here into the heavenly realm, it's like Jesus has an eye on the heavenly realm. Like there was probably I'm dramatizing here a little bit, but at like 1,000 angels or more, like ready and waiting. And I don't know if there was like a meeting, and by the way, this is dramatizing. I don't know if there was a meeting or if God told them what was happening and they were up to date on what was happening. But I can imagine as soon as they had come to take Jesus, they were ready to go. Let's go take care of this. And Jesus knew that. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? That would be kind of freaky. Can you imagine just like being here and then boom, 1,000 angels there was like ready to go? Verse 54, and I'll just go ahead and finish reading till the end because it looks like our time is up. But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what is happening now? So again, I'm not here to overthrow Rome. I'm here to do something else. And I'm here to fulfill the scriptures to overcome sin. I'm here to fill these scriptures to give life to this world. Then Jesus spoke to the crowd. Am I some dangerous criminal, he asked, that you had to arm yourselves with swords and clubs before you could arrest me? I was with you teaching daily in the temple, and you didn't stop me then. Fair question, fair response. Like, I haven't done anything wrong. And you're going to see this like a little bit here through Matthew, how this criminal trial was actually very illegal, very hidden, done at night, some very shady things that were happening. And so we're going to see that here coming up soon. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. And then here's where this kind of ends. Here, this Empire Strikes Back moment, maybe Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers. This moment where it just feels like it's not complete, it's not done. It feels like evil is won. It says, at that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. Man, it just continues to pile on. The physical difficulty, the spiritual difficulty, now the emotional side of not just the betrayal of Judas, but now they all just failed. Remember when Peter says, we're with you to the end. We're going to give our life for you. But at this moment, boom, they were out when the rubber meets the road. Maybe when Peter got his sword, maybe there's even a bit of courage there. And he saw Jesus's response to put down the sword. This isn't about Rome. This isn't about revolution. And maybe there was confusion. But whatever happened, they booked it. They ran, they took off. All the disciples deserted him and fled. Oh, and thank you for putting this picture. This is a picture of Oldest getting his ear chopped off there. And so here we see at the end of Matthew chapter 26, man, this deep and a little bit of despair that's happening. But what's coming? Something powerful. What's coming is something beautiful. What's coming is something that we can't even wrap our minds around, as far as it's one of the reasons we're even here today in 2022 in the metaverse talking about this story. The story leads to what's happening now, the Church of Jesus Christ. All right. And I think that is, they call this, hey, what's up? So thank you so much, everybody. Real quick, any questions or comments before we close in prayer? We're going to close in prayer just here in a minute. But maybe there's something in the story that impacted you and that you just wanted to share. Like, man, you know, I was thinking about this, or maybe you have a question about something. Feel free to raise your hand. And if not, see, Pastor Alina, maybe you can be prepared to close us in prayer. I'd love to take a picture, by the way, maybe at the top of the hill after prayer with everybody. But I don't see anything. Pastor Alina, any thoughts before we close? Anything you want to kind of fill in, or Alice, or Coldness, or whoever, really?
Oh no, just I think for me just there's like I almost wept in here going through the scripture and working with the build team to build this space, looking at just the deep despair that Jesus went through. This is going to sound super weird and crazy, but I'm going to share it. You remember what I talked with you, Alice? It'll be weird, but that's okay. Right, here we go. So a very long time ago, I remember there was a day I grew up as a Christian, but then I had this wonderful time of questioning, because that's a wonderful thing to do, to question stuff. And during this time of questioning, one of the things I thought was, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Like, if Jesus can just die and be raised again in 3 days, what type of big sacrifice is this? You know, and this speaks it so beautifully, so powerfully, that it is not just as simple as dying and being raised 3 days later, that there was a deep suffering that he had to endure, that he didn't have to endure, that he chose to. And not just the suffering that you know, the pain, the physical pain of the torture that he endured during his death, not just the suffering of the broken heart, surely, from his disciples whom he loved, fleeing him and leaving him alone. Not just this suffering, but the immense and unimaginable suffering of being separated from God the Father, for these 3 days. He never had to do. And I just thought, as you can see his emotions as he's preparing for this time where he's about to, the first time ever and the last time ever, be separated from his Father in heaven. Just how, like, I just can't explain how much this moved me. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you may have had questions like that before. I love that we are a church where your pastor could say, yeah, there was a time I was like, what's the big deal? Where questions are good. And feel free to always ask them, please.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Like, I'm like reading this passage, I think it was the multi turmoil. Like, it wasn't just physical, it was like the broken heart, like you said. It was that, at least in a perceived way, like the separation from God. Like, it was like multiple things. Like, that's laid on him, right? The sins of the world and all of that. And so I think, like, that's what impacted me the most, was that kind of seeing all that he went through in his body, his emotions, and his spirit. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
And
right, my
all
friend.
that he
Do you want to
didn't
close
have
this
to,
in?
but he chose to. So, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, close this
Thank
in
you.
prayer, and we'll yeah, thanks everybody. We'll continue our story next week.
But just thank you, Jesus, man. Wow, what an incredible sacrifice that you made for us, because you love us, and I can't even wrap my head around um that love. It's too big and too much that I can't even understand it. And Lord, we thank you for this. Lord, we just pray that each and every person here, those watching on Twitch, those that have never even heard of VRMMO Church, that all of your creations, Lord, that we can experience that love more fully, that we may in every day going forward know you more and understand that love a little more. Um, and we just ask a blessing for everyone that needs it. Pastor Coco, her mom, her family. I know there's many people going through a hard time. Alice, there's some things there, Lord, just special special help for those that are hurting right now and those that are going through a difficult time, and help us to talk to you all the time, every day, in big formal ways and in small casual ways, because in funny ways, like Pastor Bismick. I love that he jokes with you. I think that's awesome. And so help us just to do that more, Lord. Please, we love you, we praise you, we thank you so very much. In your precious name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.